Hi Beverley, how are you?
Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you happen to be listening to from when you listen to this. I'm good, thank you. Happy International Women's Day.
Same to you, my love, same to you. So we are excited to be recording this. Unfortunately, IT let us down again. We couldn't do this live, but we are live and we're going to share it afterwards. We are talking today about self-care after adversity. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of our conversation and the questions that we've already received from some individuals on social media, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Bev.
Okay, well, for those who don't know me, I am a specialist recovery practitioner, and that's sort of all encompassing. So I specialise in adults that have been diagnosed or suffering from chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia, chronic pain. And within that, we're looking at the underlying, what causes it. And when I say cause it, we often have, even in chronic pain, when we've had the operation, sometimes there's still pain. It's like, what's happening underneath? And that is often exacerbated by stress, even old stresses or trauma, and we often don't know how. So that's where I specialise in abuse and something called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, which some people find quite challenging, because I have people come to me and say, I had a really happy childhood, but I'm finding X, Y, Z. And I say to them, that's okay. You can still have a very happy childhood and very loving parents. But as a child, if you experience something that didn't feel nice for you, such as bullying at school, which is outside of your home, the impact can come later in life, and that's physically, mentally, neurologically, and emotionally, as we both know. So the reason why I do this is my passion. It's what I'm qualified to do, but also I have my own lived experience. And that has been huge in why I do what I do, because it's not just about studying, it's about I know and I understand and I hear.
But I think many people come to a professional role because of a lived experience in something. So whatever they do qualify in, it's almost because they've got a passion for it, because they don't want someone else to go through what they've gone through.
Absolutely. And we understand. So we understand, the challenges, and those challenges can be good challenges, but then they can also be hard challenges, and also our fear, the difference between fear and excitement. So that's how I've come through to it. But what's really intriguing as well is you and I, as we were growing up, we've been a bit like sliding doors. We've been in similar areas, we've experienced similar things, but for different reasons. So over to you, Chris, and explain about yourself for those people who don't know you.
Again, lots of lived experience growing up in domestic violence households. So again, it doesn't need to have happened to you. Even witnessing stuff that is had a negative impact on you can affect you for an episode or for a lifetime. And this is about just looking at different ways people can take care of themselves as they go from a child, adolescent to an adult, and if they are still negatively impacted, how they can make changes that are beneficial to them, and how can they reach their full potential through life by dealing with some of the stuff that may be holding them back. So we're talking about all of those different areas, but again, we have gone through actual childhood abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, bullying at school, maybe bullying, coercive control through our adult relationships. But it can also be that a child has gone through a war, exactly like what's going on in Ukraine at the moment. It could be that a child has lived with parents that have had mental health issues, or lived with an addiction. And again, we can talk about all different angles, can't we? Because we've had those lived experiences and we've talked about them personally and on a professional level as well. So there's lots that we can bring to the table, but let's just start with any questions that you might have, just to get the conversation rolling, Bev.
Well, I've got a question here from, and I'm going to say P. I'm not going to say the person's full name because I'm not sure whether they want their name said. So P has sent a question. Just bear with me because I'm going to, here we go.
Read it
right.
Verbatim.
Yes. So this person says, I have self-care tools and in the main use whichever as and when needed, which is good to hear.
Hello, you've frozen. Sorry, Bev, you're frozen. I can't hear you at the moment. Oh.
Chris?
Frozen.
Right, am I still frozen?
You're back. Right, ask the question again.
Okay, I will do it, and I'll do it a different way because, okay, I just love technology. Right, so the question is, I have self-care tools and in the main use whichever as and when needed, which is lovely to hear. My question is, how do you manage to maintain being well in yourself? You get on with life, things are going okay daily, but how to keep that momentum when your own inner voice and feelings get a look in, so to speak? Hope that makes sense. It's keeping that constant wellness and belief. Wow. Well, for me, I'd say with self-care, the real learning is not just about doing self-care when we're in a good place. It's being able to acknowledge what's going on for us and use it when we really need it and listen to our bodies. And I don't know about you, Chris, there were times over the years when I was learning about self-care, having a wellbeing toolbox, positive thinking, and at times I would get quite frustrated when I think, why is it not working? Then it took a while for me to understand that actually, oh, look at what's happening as it builds up. Listen to your body, because often our body is telling us different signs, but we haven't learned to acknowledge it. What about yourself? What would you say?
As in?
How do you learn yourself? How do you keep yourself well?
Again, it's practice. It's about having a routine for me. It's about keeping that routine. And I know that if I do not exercise daily, that will have a negative impact. My first tool in my toolbox is movement. And if I can move, then I can change the way that I feel. I can take myself out of one environment, put myself in another environment, and my whole outlook on the day or the issue, the problem, the challenge changes, and often for the positive. But I've learned that over time. So that's my one and main go-to, is to get myself out of that negative state of being or thinking, take myself out of whatever environment I'm in, change it, and then I change.
That's interesting to hear, because mine, first thing in the morning, is about nurturing myself. Nurturing, cleaning my teeth, having a shower, having something to eat, thinking about how do I nurture. So, and yes, going outside happens later because I take the dogs for a walk, go for a walk. But for me, that first thing is about what's right for me. And I think that's really important and good that we can share that, because no one thing suits everybody.
No, but that's the crux of it, isn't it? Asking yourself the question, what one thing works for you first and foremost? And yours, how do you nurture yourself? And me nurturing myself is the movement. Just get yourself out of bed, just get yourself off the sofa, just do. And it might, and I said it's movement, doesn't necessarily have to be exercise. So movement to the kitchen to prepare a meal, movement to the bathroom, run yourself a hot bath, put Epsom salts in, just change that environment, whatever it happens to be.
I think there's something also that when we're working together, there's something that you talk about, which is about responsibility. And it's about having the ability to respond.
Yeah.
And I think that very much highlights as well about our self-care. So naturally, when we're in a situation, our bodies want to respond in different ways. And that, I think, comes through in our self-tool, self-care tool. So for instance, naturally, you're taking yourself away, which is often how your body wants to respond, maybe, because it's got the extra adrenaline. Whereas for myself, I tend to disassociate, or I used to disassociate. So for me, being able to do the nurture and bring myself to here and now and reassure myself everything's okay, it reflects our response that we don't actually have a choice over. When our body responds to stress or trauma, it's reactive. And that's one of the key things that can be quite challenging to understand.
Yeah. I also think, that a lot of people say they actually feel stuck. They can't just do what we're saying. Like, how do they get the energy? How do they get the motivation? How do they just get going? And it literally is taking the responsibility for oneself to get the most out of life, but needing to identify what it is out of life that we want. I know that sounds really scary, but identify what it is. And it could be just as basic as, I do not want to be living my life like this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to feel, I don't want to be, I want something different. So that is the crux. Call it a breakdown, call it a breakthrough, call it whatever you want. But when you get to that point where change will happen because doing nothing is not feasible, it doesn't serve you anymore, then that is when you're going to start seeing these little changes, these little things to make a difference in your life. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I remember when people used to say that to me years and years ago, and I think, but I don't know what it is I want. But when we're able to acknowledge, first of all, I don't want this, that's a starting point. Because when you write down, I don't want this to continue, then you can start looking at what you do want.
Yeah. And again, when we're running the groups, Bev, often people say, as you said, I don't know. It's too big. It's just too overwhelming, too stressful. And of course, we want to decrease the stress bucket, not increase it. So it is, okay, well, write down then what it is you don't want. And people find that a lot easier than you just flip it. And whatever it is you said you don't want, you then can quite easily find what it is you do want. So let's give an example. I don't want to be spoken down to anymore. Can become, I will not allow anyone to speak down to me anymore. So then you've just built yourself a boundary that you're not going to let anyone into your life and treat you in a certain way, because you know how it feels to be treated in a certain way, and you don't like that. You're not going to allow that to happen. So then you flip it and you build that boundary.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing about that boundary, when you have them written, what I say to people when they've done that, forget other people for the moment, put it back to yourself.
Yeah.
Because we are often, without thinking about it, are more critical of ourselves and less accepting of ourselves than we would be to anyone else. So
And
if we won't let, we won't let other people speak down to us, then that negative talk that comes to us, no, we're not having it.
Why are we doing it to ourselves, you know? So as we said on many conversations, it's about treating ourselves as we would treat a loved one or a best friend. So if we wouldn't, so for me, for example, I wouldn't call you a negative name in any way, shape or form, because I love you, you're my friend. So why would I allow myself to do that to me? I need to treat myself as I would treat you or anybody else, with love, care, respect. Yeah. So we need to turn that in on ourselves. So that's ultimate, isn't it? Self-care after adversity. We often feel that we're not worthy because we've been called names or we've been treated with violence in different forms. So we often feel that we're not worthy. We often believe what we've been told, and that's just not the case. The case is there are these horrible people that have been in our lives that have treated us in a way that has impacted us, and that we might believe that, and we need to get rid of that belief. How do we do that?
Well, there are lots of different ways, and I don't mind sharing, because we're sharing about self-care over adversity. When people used to talk to me about journaling, I found journaling a little bit overwhelming because it was lots of words, and that's because of different things that happened to me as a child. I've recognised that now, and however, I very much like colour. I found a creative side in me. There's always been that love of art. And so I write down words. So I've even got one behind me here. This is a very positive one. So if I get a bit nervous, I'll look at this and think, trust my own thinking. I don't know if you can see it behind the bar. Now, I am worthy of love. Now, these are all positive things, but I also, when we talk about the acknowledgement, I will do the same thing, but I will find a colour of a pen that I don't like, and I will tap into how that colour makes me feel and just write those words and allow it to come out. So I do it both ways, and that's one of the ways that I found for me personally has been really good. And then when I've done that, I can go for a walk.
Explain to me the negative colour and what it is you do.
Yeah, I'll show you. You won't be able to read all the words.
No, I can't see any of it. It's too small.
And to be honest, I also like it that you can't see all the words. So I had an issue only the other week that was going round and round in my head. And so I got a black pen because it's dark. And, I used to be afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to feel like if people could see the real me, they'd see this big black hole inside, and it was dark.
Okay. You've frozen again.
So I write the words about how I'm feeling, and I tap into that dark place, and I just write them down, let them come out. Once I've got them out, you all right,
do you
Chris?
feel that releases when you use the colour that reflects how you're feeling, and then you write the words in that colour? Does that release it from your body?
Yes, because it enables me. I'm a very good survivor, very good. I know my strengths. My challenge is being vulnerable and being able to tap into the emotion sometimes, because my body wants to shut that off. That's how I've always survived. That's natural to all survivors, to disassociate from the emotion, from the feeling part. and become so much in your head trying to find a solution, but needed to tap into the emotion.
And we found that on the course, didn't we, where people said that they feel that when they show their vulnerability, that they feel that's a weakness. And the thing is, it's not, we know it to be a strength, but it is it feels like a weakness when the person that we've interacting with, when we share it, when they use that against us.
Absolutely.
So if we share our vulnerability, which is our strength, to somebody that cares, then it's received in a completely different way. And it can be really empowering for us who share our vulnerability if it's supported, if we feel supported, and if there's the trust there. But when it's used against us, then that is when we often retreat, backtrack, and we feel, you know, really like, oh my goodness, that should never have happened. That's an abuse in itself.
Yeah. And I'm a solution focused person, and I know that's great, and that, you know, that's what got me through loads, you know, growing up and in adulthood. But sometimes it's okay not to have solutions. Sometimes it's okay to sit with this. It doesn't feel very nice at the moment. And I was getting lots of different messages and feelings, and it was around finance. So, you know, finance is a scary word for a lot of people. So then on the right hand side, I then picked up a colour which happened to be orange, because orange for me is about adventure, moving forward, sunshine, freedom. And so I put different words in about feeling good around this situation, and actually allowed myself to feel it. So reframing some of those negative things I've been feeling earlier.
Okay. And that's how you sort of like work it out.
So then I did the red, which for me was anger, allowed the anger to come out, because anger is an emotion that we're often quite frightened of. So I allowed the anger out. Sorry.
But not only frightened, but it's frowned upon.
Yeah, but it's an emotion. It's like laughter, joy, happiness, sadness. It's okay to be angry at times, you know, and frustrated.
But I think we should be allowed to show our anger, but where it's wrong is when people take their anger out on an innocent person, you know.
Absolutely.
Or where we deflect it onto others when it's not their fault. We're angry at certain situations, we're angry at certain individuals, but because we can't voice it to them for whatever reason, they may be dead, they may be not in our lives, but that it's still impacting us. We still need to be able to offload this anger and share it, but in a way that's not detrimental to others that don't deserve it.
Absolutely. So by releasing that, I then picked up green. So for me, green is grounding, and it enabled me to write other things, you know, after I'd released it, and ground myself and really feel connected with myself. And then the hearts, I put them in red as well, anyway, because red is passion in my mind. And you know what? It's okay to be angry, even with someone you love. It's okay.
Of course. Yeah.
And so this is reflected with myself, because the anger was at myself in the situation that I was in. The anger was the frustration. And actually, by doing that, I then was able to go to bed. And in the morning, I woke up refreshed and actually tackled it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the tools that I use.
It seems to me like quite an advanced tool in your toolkit, as in some people may not be able to do that straight away, but everybody can keep a journal, and everybody can write in a journal, can't they, about how they're feeling, what the situation is, acknowledging it, acknowledge how they're feeling, and try and come up with some solutions for themselves, either in a group of like-minded people or with practitioners like yourself, or with counsellors, whatever it is they need, but they need to take that first step and reach out and acknowledge what it is they're going through, and acknowledge what support they've got, what they need, and take that step to get the help and support that they do need, because it is out there. People don't realise.
Absolutely. And I just want to share as well, Chris, what I did on that board is something that I couldn't do a long time ago.
Right.
So I literally started the first step, as you say, the first step, it was just to be able to write on there the sentence about how I feel. Yeah. Not even a sentence, words.
Word.
You know, like sad or angry or happy or joyful, relaxed. That was the only thing I could do then.
Yeah.
So I absolutely hear.
Lots of people say like they've got a washing machine going on in their head, or they feel tightness in their throat or tightness in their muscles, and they just they feel, but they can't verbalize, they can't acknowledge. But that's what we are encouraging people to do, because it's only when you take it out of your head, the thoughts, the feelings, and putting the emotions down, that we can actually start working out what's going on for ourselves.
Absolutely. And it is that learning, it comes back to but being soft, kind to yourself. You know, soft with yourself. It's a step at a time, one thing. If there's one thing you get out of your head, but we all know that if we're thinking of 5 different things and we write them down, it's only 5 things when you write it down. When it's going in our head, it's going round and round and round, and it's exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely exhausting. And coming from a place of trauma, it triggers that fight, flight, freeze, flop, friend response. And it can just be a continuous loop of adrenaline and cortisol and emotional eating and anger and mood swings and everything firing off left, right and centre, until you are so exhausted, so drained, you just don't know where to start. And that's where a lot of people do get to, and that's what we're trying to say to you. Stop, breathe. What is going on for you? Where is your stress?
But there's also a physical reason as well, which is something I love explaining. So our skull is the same size, but the muscles in there, we've got the left hand side and we've got the right hand side of our brain. So the left hand side of our brain is the responding side, and the right hand side is the creative thinking, the thinking ahead, the relaxed side. So when we're in that state and everything's going around our head, our amygdala is releasing adrenaline, and the left hand side of our brain is the reactive, you know, solution finding, reacting, responding in a way that is right for your body, and it shuts down the right hand side of your brain, the creative thinking. It doesn't want you to think, it wants you to react in the moment all the time.
So you can't think, you only can survive and deal with surviving.
Yeah. So it's, well, what we're trying to do is release the feel-good hormone, the serotonin, and slow down that adrenaline, you know. And sometimes in the moment, you know, we all talk about breathing, and I remember when somebody said, well, just breathe three times slowly, and I was like, just breathe. I am breathing. I hadn't realised this. I was breathing from the top of my chest, not from the whole lungs.
Yeah. And from the belly, you know, you can take it really deep down. But again, breathing as an exercise to take you out of the stress state to your calm, relaxed state side of your central nervous system only works if you practice it when you're not so stressed, when you're not overwhelmed and feeling like, so we need to practice that.
Because when we most need it, I call it my teenage self. My teenage self used to say, I'm not doing that. So what do you do for yourself for self-care then? You know, I've shared with what I do with the words and the colours. What do you do for yourself, Chris? I know you like to go out.
Yeah, I do like to be out on one hand, but then on the other hand, I also like being in my own home because this is my safe place. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about, really, is safety and security. What does that look like? Because when we don't feel safe because our brain's going everywhere, or we haven't got a physical safe space, then it's really difficult to do this deep work. So say, like we was touching upon this the other day, Bev, when we've got financial worries, or we've got a fear of losing our home, and we've both been there. When we've got a fear, you know, there's this war going on at the moment, so there's lots of people worried about their physical safety, their homelessness, all of that. When you haven't got that security, when you haven't got that safety around you, it's really hard to even think about, you know, growth, job prospects, whatever it is, because you have to have that basic sense of safety, basic sense of security. So when your relationship that you're in is not giving you that, or when the job situation that you're in, or the benefit situation that you're in is not giving you that, it feels like you're on quicksand. It really does. We need that constant, solid foundation of security and safety first before we can do any of the other work. It just, that's how we need
Absolutely.
to feel. And again, I just wanted to go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs that I thought about this morning. It was only at school when I was studying families, and what does I know families in inverted commas is completely different nowadays, but back when I was at school, it was all about the nucleus, the mum, the dad, the two children as the standard. Of course, that is not what a family looks like nowadays. But, and then it was only then that I realized that I was actually born and brought up in abusive households, because I understood that a normal family, there was love, nurture, care, there was safety, security, stability, there was food, water, health. I had none of that. You had none of that. Yeah. So it's like, and people going through war at the moment, they've got none of that. Okay. So it's only when you've got those basic building blocks in place that you can start looking for love and trust and connection, that you can start looking at fulfilling your potential. So there are certain building blocks that need to be in place and that we need to work towards before we go for those higher levels of, you know, feeling fulfilled and feeling that we've got our true potentials being recognized. Do you agree? Do you not agree?
Absolutely. And to be honest, I did get that sometimes because I was taken into care. So I was a looked after child. Now, to some people, that sounds the worst thing ever. But for me, it took me out of the toxic environment and took me into another environment. Yes, I needed to learn how to live in that environment. However, it gave me some basic things that I didn't get. It enabled me to do was to learn. And when we don't get it from around, it is about those boundaries that we put in place for ourselves. And I think for me, a really good example of that is when you're on an aeroplane and the oxygen masks. And we're told to put the oxygen mask on ourselves before we help our children or anyone else. And at the time, the first few times, I used to think, I'm putting it on my children first.
Yeah, then I'm a mother. That's the first thing I'm going to do.
Yeah, but actually, no. Because if I'm putting it onto them and then I lose oxygen, how am I going to continue? Whereas if I put the oxygen mask on, keep myself well, then I can help my children, I can help the person next to me and many more. And I think that for me really helped me understand what self-care is about. And the boundaries within myself. If I look after me, then I can look after others, or I will know how to receive what's right from other people.
Yeah, I know we've got to wrap up because you've got to go to work, but going back to that point, looking after yourself, many of us feel like it's a selfish act, and it's not, just because of how you've just described it. But often survivors, survivors of adverse events feel that they don't deserve, feel that they're not worthy. So it's almost, you need to do a few things at once. It's about rebuilding or giving yourself that self-esteem, that self-worth, by loving, nurturing, caring for yourself, whilst also having the stability and the security and the ability to have, you know, enough food, enough like water, having your health, having a roof over your head. So it's almost like all of these things do need to happen, but often one thing will take over and have a bigger need than another, and you have to work on that first and then go back and work on something else. But as you said, it's about those boundaries, and it's about putting those safe boundaries around yourself first, giving yourself what you need, and then being able to pay it forwards.
Yeah, and there's a question here, and that probably comes up at the right time at the moment. It said, at the moment, with the awful happenings in Ukraine, and I would also like to say Russia, because in any war, you know, there's innocent people, you know,
on both sides.
On both sides.
Mm-hmm.
How do you battle your own upset over it and guilt of being upset when actually I'm in a far better place and should feel pleased with that? Yet I feel I'm being selfish when I'm thinking of my well-being.
I know. Good question. Absolutely good question. Because when we're not feeling so great ourselves, but if you look around, we have got more. We're always going to be in a position where even though we're going through stuff ourselves, we've got more than somebody else. We haven't gone through, in our minds, perceived abuse like somebody else. Someone's always got it worse than us. But the thing is, they're right, but we should not be comparing ourselves with anybody else. We should be still looking out for number one, and still investing in ourselves, and still taking care of our own needs. And when we can still help other people. We can still pay forwards. So we can still be on our own journey and help other people along with their journey as well. But we're not responsible for every single person in this world either. We can't be. We just can't be. You know, we can be worried about this and that and that and that. And if we worry about things that are outside our control, it's just going to make us ill and bring us down. So what is within your control? What is it that you can do right now for yourself? Someone else that is not as fortunate, whatever that may be. It might be paying out some money. It might be going to help your next door neighbor or a family member, whatever it is. And then don't worry about that is stuff that is completely out of your control, because what can you do about it? Really, realistically, what can we do about the war in Ukraine and Russia and other countries around the world that's been going on for decades? What can we do? We can't. And we can worry ourselves into an early grave, though, about it all.
Yeah, and that's where I think the importance of self-care comes in, because obviously we become very empathetic because we know what it is.
Yeah.
But you can be empathetic, look after yourself, and then find ways and different options of what can you do to help support.
Yes, but exactly.
Support, I think, brings it very nicely, because we all need support.
Yeah.
And you know, as women, you know, excuse me, remember it's International Women's Day today.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say thank you because I had some great women in my life growing up, whether as a young child, as an adult, and the support of other women has been conducive into who I am today.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm very passionate about support for other people. So yes, self-care is the priority, but being able to do that enables us to then support others, which is really important. And, you know, with the current situations going on all over the world, you know, it's how can we continue to support each other? And we don't always know, but even just saying hello to somebody really does help sometimes.
But even you working with your clients, me running this course for other survivors at the moment, we are supporting not only ourselves and our families, but we're supporting a group of other people that need support. And then they in turn, when they get in a better place for them, they are supporting and helping other people. So there is a positive knock-on effect. There just is. And where we can go and give money, we can go and give supplies, or we can just help in our own way, whatever we feel is the right thing for us to do, to give and to add value somewhere. So I think that's really important. Be grateful for what you do have, be kind to yourselves, but also do not down regulate or dismiss what you've been through and the impact that it's having on you. Do not do that, because that is where self-care falls down to the floor. If you don't feel that you're important, you are. Every single one of us is important, because if we don't give our self-care the importance that it demands and deserves, then we're not in a place to help others. We're just not.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I do need to go.
Yes, I know.
And it's been great talking with you. Anyone watching this, if they've got any other questions that they'd like to ask, contact us, Chris Tuck, Beverley Ann, and Step Forward Practice, and Chris.
Survivors of Abuse.
Yeah. And have a good day. And remember,
have a lovely day.
What one thing are you going to do for yourself after listening to this that makes you feel loved and nurtured?
Exactly. Or what love and nurture can you give to somebody else right at this moment in time? Lovely speaking to you. Thank you. Speak to you soon.
And Chris.
Bye.
Bye.